Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi, an intuitive human design business guide, trauma-informed healer, and the creator of the 90-second method. And in today's episode, it's such a beautiful one. And I say this because it's that kind of healing that doesn't just live in your mind. It actually lives in your body, your breath, and your nervous system. And I am joined by Elizabeth Hudson. She is a spiritual teacher and transformational life coach. So let's dive in. Elizabeth, I'm so happy to have you here with us this morning, and I would love for you to start sharing a little bit about who you are and what led you into this work.
Hello, Lauren. Thank you so much. I love the title of your podcast, Enlightened Misfits. It's definitely something I think that we've all gone through, and feeling out of place in the world is certainly a common theme. Um, yes, and often it's because we're meant to build a bigger one, bigger and better one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yes. Yeah, so I have been a spiritual teacher of Kundalini yoga and meditation for over 20 years. And then I've transformed that into my own coaching business, which involves the use of breath work, meditation, and looking at everything from spirit. So, really examining your life. If you were to pull out and look at the whole arc of your story, why the obstacles and opportunities are occurring to evolve your soul, essentially. And that's really the space from which I coach. And what's unique about my coaching is that I work with the somatic tools. I work with the movement and really embodying a practice. So it's not spiritual bypassing. It's not, clocking out and just floating in the ethers. It's about how do we carry that meditation into our daily life. And that's really the practicality of a yoga practice. It's that you're living in the breath, you're living in the present moment. And often, because we're human beings in the third dimension, we have to experience things to understand them. That's a deeper type of learning that then becomes more integrated versus just theoretical. So we can read something in a book and underline it and go, yes, yes, I get it, I get it. But it's often not until we experience something personally that we really transform with it.
Yeah, I love that. When you say that too, I've been hearing a lot of people say like I feel broken
Mm,
or there's something wrong with me. And to your point that you just said, I feel like that is the experience. Like that's what we're here for. And I think, in the beginning, or maybe you just don't, maybe I think in the beginning for me, I also felt, I'm sure I probably told myself that or said that about myself and realizing, no, I'm like, I'm human and it's a human experience that I came here to experience. So
exactly.
I do, yes, I do. I do wholeheartedly agree with what you just said.
And in embracing that, right, we
Right.
we offer less resistance to the challenges. We go, okay, okay, this is here for my soul to grow, and it's really uncomfortable, but I'm not going to skid against the pain. I'm going to breathe through it, move through it, and that's often what when we experience a challenge in a physical form, be it a sport or an exercise, a yoga practice, we understand what it means to push through discomfort. We get to the other side of it and we go, I'm okay. And I up leveled because I challenged myself and I've gone through that and shown myself that I can. And so that's really a lot of why somatic work is so important, is because it's your experience that nobody can take away from you. You earned it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I say this all the time now that, when I learned, in the beginning, I should say, when I really took my spiritual journey and healing seriously, like just like that turning point that everybody has, I realized that I wish somebody would told me about my nervous system or somatic work. And it was like years later, I realized I got to a point that was still feeling like stuck. And it was more of like integrating that somatic of like coming into the body versus staying in the mind versus like coming back into the body, which, kind of led me into also becoming a yoga instructor,
Mhm.
specifically focusing on Kundalini yoga as well.
Awesome.
And I feel like just using that for myself kind of put me into this place of like what I do now too. And I think that's really powerful when you kind of like step into that path. So for you, What was that like personal turning point that kind of brought you into mindfulness, spiritual teaching and being a transformational coach?
I think again, going from back to the Misfits, right? Always feeling like I didn't quite understand the world. I always felt, a deep connection to source and nature, and had prophetic dreams my whole life. Things where I
Mhm.
would have a dream, I'd write it down even, and then I'd go to this place and I'd be like, "Oh, I can tell you what's in the other room or what's around the corner." And I've told my mother this recently, but as much as she didn't understand me, she never doubted me, and I actually was able to thank her about that recently. I said, "You know, you never made me shut down. You would listen and
Yeah.
allow it, and not tell me you're crazy, that never happened, or all the ways that we experience miracles and kismet and the magic of this world. Often as children we get shut down by telling that's not real. That's in your imagination. That's not the real world. And the truth is, to your point about the nervous system, right? The real world is frequency.
Right.
The real world is frequency. And when we are operating in a frequency of fear and scarcity and obedience and control,
Right.
we vibrate at a certain frequency. And in that frequency, we can be more controlled, and we can be less likely to experience more expansive energies. When you have a balanced nervous system, you have a different frequency. You have an openness, you have an open heart, you have a generosity of spirit, you have a self love. And in that frequency, you vibrate differently. So I always felt I didn't understand a lot of the ways that the world worked, and I always sought something different. So I practiced many different modalities and spiritual teachings, and was always seeking. And once I found Kundalini Yoga, I really enjoyed it because I felt like, oh, this is my own. This I made it very much my own practice of just being with God and being in my breath and healing and calming myself. And from that place, I felt empowered, and then enjoyed teaching that to others.
Yeah. And I think that that is very powerful. And I love that your mom, did not give, like, did not shut you down. And from my experience, I do know that my parents did because I was very, very similar. It's like I'm looking at a mirror like that was me too. And I very early on would say things of like, oh, I see my mom, or like, when my grandmother had passed, and my mom would be like, oh no, don't talk about that, and I now know, even still now, my mom, my mom listens to the podcast, and it's interesting how I've been able to teach her as well as she teaching me of like, my own self-love and knowing her role and like just being able to see, why because, we do choose our parents. So I now see why, she was just keeping me safe. It's not like she was doing something to harm me, but in the same token, it was like, I can't even go back and like, I wish my mom would have been, like different, because then I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have had to learn that lesson or go through that experience. So, but I do love that your mom never gave you that self-doubt of like, or shutting you down, because I think that that is truly powerful too. And probably, you know, gave you that self-confidence in yourself to, always be who you are.
Yeah, and that is such a good point. Thank you for reminding us all that we do choose these circumstances, including our family units and soul families that we've have karma with, and things to work out and things to grow here together. Um, and I think it's unique because it's my mom and I didn't always see eye to eye, and she's very religious, and I always was more spiritual and less wanting to put a box around God and call it this or that. But it respects certainly all different faiths and all different. I'm very much of the one truth, many paths.
Right.
But I like that she allowed me versus going, no, 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 that isn't true. And so because I think I would have been prone to just going, oh, okay, so I'm then no, and shutting it off. Um, and so from that place, I've been able to seek and explore and find confidence in that I hold healing abilities, and I hold a purpose that is about healing and helping as many people as I can find that within themselves. That self-realization and that openness and that connection to God is always available to all of us when we understand that truth, when we're not blocked with illusion programming and fear.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you say that too, because a lot of the audience that listens to the podcast specifically are very highly sensitive, trauma survivors or spiritual intuitive women. So how do you teach like mindfulness to let's just say somebody that their nervous system is already overwhelmed or maybe feels like I cannot do one more thing?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of pressure of like, I'm not doing it right, right? With meditation. It's like, my mind doesn't stop. I can't. And having taught so many different levels and children and, people over the years, it really just starts with there is no right way to meditate. It's just about being present. It's just about I always kind of use the image of like come up and out of yourself a bit, as if you were, an eagle looking down on yourself with compassion, and that you are the observer rather than the monkey mind, rather than the thoughts, ricocheting around in your head. And you can kind of watch them, and you may get caught down the river with them again, but you can come back out and watch them again. And it's always available to it. And there's no failure, there's no right way. You're not supposed to sit there and just bliss out and go into nirvana. It's normal to have, right? I mean, sure, you can maybe eventually get there and it can happen and it can happen instantaneously. It's not like even something that you have to earn. And why I say that is because some people are like, well, if I meditate in a cave for 20 years and, no, you could sit here right now, any one of us, and drop into a deep state of connection to spirit, to God, in the healthiest way. But I always try to inform people to be gentle with themselves and not feel like there's a right way to do it. It's all about what you experience for yourself. And I think that takes some of the pressure off it, and you can just sit and breathe, right? Be present in your breath as much as possible and as much compassion towards yourself, right? The whole Ho'oponopono prayer, I'm sure you know that one, the Hawaiian,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What is it? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I thank you.
Yeah. Or yeah, I love you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. Yeah. I think it's along those lines. I know that I've been saying it. I guess I say my own version of that because I'm like, now I
Yeah.
need to go look that up. Like what is actually that?
It is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I thank you. And I
Yes,
always took
yes,
issue,
yeah.
I'll tell you, I always took issue with like, who am I apologizing to? Why am I sorry? And I was like, oh, and the more I sat with it, I realized like, oh, I'm saying I'm sorry to the part of myself that I betrayed, the part of myself that I
Right.
abandoned. You're not apologizing to God. You're not apologizing to any person. It's about like offering compassion to any part of yourself that was self-destructive or unkind to yourself. And that's a very healing exercise to do for people who, especially, are in
Yeah.
trauma or feeling, the nervous system fry that so many people are in, um, being sensitive humans at a very intense time on the planet.
Yes, especially I feel like I've been saying that prayer a lot lately
Yeah.
because I feel and it's just for me to say that to myself now and like, all of the healing that I have done and I realize that like it's okay. All right, I'm okay. Like I'm we're okay.
Right.
Everything is okay. And I think that that kind of goes back to meditation and especially when you say, like the monkey brain and like being the observer. It was probably one of the big kind of like this feels different when my first mentor like 6 years ago had said, okay, do you meditate? I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I sit and stare out and just like zone out. And she's like, well, that's part of it. What are
Yeah.
you thinking about? And it's like, I'm thinking about why I don't want to be on Earth. Like I don't, this plant, this is hard. It's hard here,
Yeah.
And then, you go like more and more and more that I'm realizing that like life will always life, even in the midst of, you know, things happening, you can always find, gratitude or, oh, this is happening. And like coming from that place of, a client kept saying to me a couple days ago, it's like, of course that happens, of course. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
You're,
Yes.
the universe only knows very short vocabulary. Like, so whatever you're thinking, feeling, saying, whatever, so be it. And I think that that's really powerful. It's been really powerful for me because that stops me in my tracks of like, oh, whoa, what am I thinking, saying, doing that is going to like, it's kind of like when you stub your toe and then you drop something and then like it's like this it's like a domino effect of things of like just stopping yourself and be like, how can I change this perspective?
Yes.
Or how can I change this bad day into then they used to turn into bad weeks and months and then years. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Sure. And
You
it's a
know?
lot of the, yes, and what I hear you saying is such an important truth for us to remember that
Right.
we find what we seek, right? So if
Right.
you're saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's just my luck," or "Of course," to the
Yeah.
universe, you're saying on some level you expect the failure, you expect the hardship, you expect the difficulty.
Yeah.
Um, and the truth is the more we can be from in yogic terms, right? We have the positive mind, which is like what just gets us out of bed in the morning. The
Right.
negative mind, which is what protects us from like crossing the street when a truck is coming, and the neutral mind. And the neutral mind is that space of non-attachment, right? That the Buddhists talk about. It's that space of being the observer without the ego going, that's right, wrong, black, white, you know, and from that space, we can watch things with a little more objectivity and a little more gentleness, right? I always use
Yeah.
the term of judgment versus discernment, right? When we're
Yeah.
judging something, our ego's involved, and we're going, and we're projecting our own self onto it. When we're discerning, we're a little more neutral. We're going, that doesn't vibrate with a frequency that I want to be on, right?
Yeah.
And really, this I want to say something that's really important because so many people feel like, oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't judge. I shouldn't be negative. But the truth
Yeah.
is, it's starting with a gentleness toward ourself. And as you said, when you're grateful, you start to see more of the good things. You start to see more things to be grateful for. And that starts to expand into more positive thinking. And to be gentle with ourselves when we are in our negative mind is understanding that that's how we've survived by
Right.
clocking what could be dangerous, often because there was a trauma in our past, often because the world isn't safe at times, and we've had to constantly be looking for danger. So that is a loving way to look at that toward yourself is that's kept me safe at times. That's kept me alive. But I don't always have to look through the filter of danger or fear. And that's a readjust of spirit. And it's powerful.
Yeah. Even to the point of like parents too, or like they call it gentle parenting. And, my daughter is 6 right now, and I'm starting to see patterns and I'm starting to see like, things that come up that like I can be better and do better at. And I often notice that same thing with my husband now.
Mm.
He's pretty much helped me raise her. She does still see her bio dad, but he's the present, male figure in her life every day. And I've started to notice that, and I'm going to be very vulnerable to share this, and he'll probably like, why did you have to talk about that? But I feel like it's really important because I'm starting to see how his parenting skills and parenting style comes from his dad and his mom of that fear base of me, you know, saying like yelling specifically or being gentle. And it's like I take myself as the observer of like observing what's happening between maybe the dynamic of like my daughter not listening. And then he steps in and he's yelling. And I'm like, you're, now there's this fear base. And it's like, like I can see how those patterns are replaying. And I think a lot of, a couple of my clients have said, like, even just like, what do you do with Lily or like a vice? And it's like, the connection piece specifically is, or she's like a mirror to me of like what I need to do for myself. Same thing with like, there was a time recently that she was waking up in the middle of the night and I immediately knew it was nervous system related because I was, kind of having a challenge with my own nervous system and like shifting and changing and realizing different things. And I think that was mirrored back to me of like, mommy, I need you to kind of help me with my nervous system. And it's like me incorporating that and seeing that kind of go into her generation or will carry on into her generation too.
Yeah.
Negative or positive, there's kind of like some damage control that we have to do right now. But, like I think that that's really important I'm saying this because I think it's really important for, parents to understand too. We're all trying to do our best here. And I think it's really powerful when you said about that gentle place. That reminds me of like reminding myself to be gentle with myself, but also us to be gentle with our children too.
Such a good point. And that is what, being a parent, I know for myself, is such a humbling journey, right? It's
Mhm.
nothing, first of all, nothing drops you into your heart center and unconditional love and the closest thing to, God's love than having children. But it's such a humbling journey because so much of it is uncharted territory, right? We're trying to figure out what didn't work with our parents and how we would do things differently. And so parenting is such a journey of spiritual healing when
Right.
done
Yeah.
consciously, right? If you're just unconsciously doing what was done to me and, et cetera, et cetera. But it really does give you an opportunity to reframe. How do I want to raise a gentle human? What would have helped me if I had had it, right? What would have been a better circumstance? And if I'm capable of doing that, please, guide me as best you can. And they come with their own instructions, right? These kids, they are such
Yeah.
powerful souls, and you just go, wow, okay. I have found that with both my kids. They come in already so fully uh, individual and unique. And I do the best I can to guide them and offer support and protection. And then you have to, mine are now 20 and 18, so it's a different chapter.
Yeah.
It's intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually it's interesting how I'm in with my one of my mentors that we do somatic work they all have teenage to adult, children, 18, 21, I say adult, but like are we all any of us really adults? Like we just all like kids.
Adulting is overrated anyway.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to be an adult. And I tell that to my daughter all the time because she goes, Mommy, I can't wait. She was talking about driving. Like she's 6 and she goes, Mommy, when can I start driving? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to look that up. Like, I think it's 16, maybe 17. I don't know, but why are you worried about that? Like, she's like, I just want to drive myself to school. I'm like, you have a lot of time. And then I was thinking, gosh, she doesn't. It's 10 in 10 years. She's gonna be driving, So it's just a really interesting it's interesting because I've always raised her very conscious. And that's pretty much where my healing journey started of like, okay, I have to change. I have to get my shit together and I need to change. And it was more of like I tried to make it in control of me in my decision and
Mm.
realizing, no, I don't really have any control of this. Like, really, do I have any control of any of that? No, not really. But it was kind of like just kind of moving through that. And um it's just interesting because you said about the spiritual, parenting is like a spiritual journey. And I wholeheartedly believe that because if she's, doing something or something's triggered inside of me or, like something's happening, it's a direct reflection on me because it's something that I need to kind of look at within myself. Maybe I'm avoiding it. Maybe, something happened, not all the things, but like maybe something happened at school and she doesn't know how to communicate that. And specifically lately has been anger. And it's interesting because
Mm.
I've been working through my own anger and it's always told to me, even now, like anger is bad. And I'm like, oh, anger has been my biggest protector. And I do know that. Now, before I could understand what anger was, or like why I felt so angry, like I always say this, she's probably never going to know this. I probably tell her at one point, but like she's my biggest teacher because she's been very angry lately. And I'm like,
Mm.
what's going on? Like, do you feel so angry? And like trying to kind of help her talk through that.
Mm.
And then she's just like, I don't know, mommy, I just feel angry. And then like goes on about her day. And I'm like, okay. maybe that was a message for me. So
Mhm.
I think that that's really powerful, like us to just sit and listen to our kids
Very
too.
much. And and there's nothing that makes you want to be better more than that love for your child, right? So
Right.
it's it challenges us to go, wow, what are the things I need to look at in myself, and how can I grow them even when it's deeply uncomfortable. But to your point about anger, especially for the feminine, it's a taboo emotion in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Female rage is often tampered or subdued or considered, crazy, right? Or bitchy, or whatever way that gets expressed, that we're often
Yeah.
like, I want to be amenable, I want to be likable, I want to be softer, I want to be, but the truth is there is justifiable anger that is what, as you said, protects us, right?
Yeah.
It creates boundaries, it creates, and it can be fuel to elicit change as long as it's not turned inward into self-destruction or outward
Right.
into violence, right?
Right.
Or cruelty. But anger is actually a constructive emotion if we are raised with it consciously, like it sounds like you're doing. And even she's teaching you, right? Like, it's okay, I just feel angry, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Usually it's covered by you didn't let me do something. So, and I do know I do know that like if it's kind of like you took this away from me, it's more of like you need to go to bed because you have school in the morning, but it's
right.
more of like you're mean, mommy. And I was like, okay, I hear you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
know, and then she just kind of just like, and I don't give any attention to it because I'm like, she doesn't really mean that. But it's like I can understand and see that if I didn't even understand my own emotions or I didn't understand that, I feel like that is a huge part of a few of my clients right now that are having trouble with um, their partners too. And I think that speaking about, and I do want to talk a little bit about this too, but like intimacy and that sacredness of, how, the emotional, safety is really important, especially in relationships, mainly with yourself first. And then, mirrors out to your kids and your spouse. So can you kind of talk a little bit about kind of how you kind of integrate this into the practice that you do with your clients?
hmm well, so I started a podcast in 2019 called it was called Sexual Alchemy. I've changed it to Sacred Alchemy. Um, just because the word sexual is so triggering for a lot of people,
Yeah,
I don't know, it implies more, I don't know, salacious or titillating that it's meant to. So I changed it
right,
to Sacred Alchemy because it's really about talking about the sacral chakra, right? So we know that the second chakra, the sex organs, the
right,
color orange in the chakra scale, is called the sacral chakra because it is the sacred energy through which the portal energy through which life enters this earth, enters the third dimension. And as womb bearers, we are that portal through which the energy enters the world. That sacredness of the feminine, as we see, is often distorted in this world. And certainly there's a lot of pain around that, both for males and females collectively. In my teachings with clients, and what I'm working on more and more is about that consciousness around healed sexuality. So, first of all, removing shame as much as possible and all the ways that that's uh, subtly and not so subtly imposed upon us from a very young age. That there's something naughty or bad around sexuality. Um, and often, so many of us are suffering from trauma and abuse around sexuality. And
yeah,
so, starting from that place, bringing conversation and consciousness and light into the sacral chakra is really my goal. And so it's about the alchemy, which is the ultimate transmutation, from something base to something profound, to something divine, to something magical, right? Lead to gold. Um, that's the opportunity when we heal around our sacral chakra, because on some level, from spirit, if we're told that the energy through which we came here is naughty and bad, then on some level we're saying our human existence is naughty and bad. It's less than, it's dirty, it's not divine. And my goal, as much as possible, is to turn that on its head and say, in fact, your energy, the divine force, the pleasure and connection uh, and lovemaking and sexual expression is divinity in form, and you are sparks of God. There's no just human. We are magical beings, and that's a very different message than I think a lot of us have been told. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I definitely will. And I think that the shame piece, can you kind of speak a little bit about, because there is some people, most people that I
Mhm.
work with or listen to this podcast or that I've connected with, that they have this, me included, that I had this experience with sexual trauma. And it carried into, I want to say, every relationship,
Mm,
especially with myself, and also, how I treated myself, where I put myself, what I
mhm,
allowed myself. And I think that that piece is, I think I'm still unpacking some of it, specifically when it comes to like my business and where that shows up in areas of my business too.
mhm.
The shame piece.
Of course. It's one of the most powerful negative emotions, and it can, what's what's so intense about it is it's insidious, right? Because it's layered on at a very base foundational level that it's lack of safety, right? So
Yeah.
there's that feeling of it's not safe to be in my body, it's not safe to be touched there. Um, and the prevalence of sexual abuse is extraordinary. It's just extraordinary of what we're more and more uncovering of how many, the prevalence of pedophilia and sexual exploitation that goes on that so many people have to heal from. And I
Yeah.
think that it's not just, even if it hasn't necessarily happened to you, there is a collective trauma that we all suffer through, of the way sexuality is depicted, the way it's this force. It's so confusing, right? The messaging that are given children, that anybody can just pick up their phone and download the darkest pornography, the most explicit, sadistic things. There's there's no boundaries anymore. So we
Right.
have to be the navigators of this field of energy and information. And it's overwhelming, right? Especially if you don't have a foundation in yourself of self love. My body's a safe place to be. My expression of my sexuality is beautiful, and I can come from the heart, and I deserve to feel pleasure. How revolutionary would that be if
Right.
we, as we are mothers, raising our children with that, um, as much as we can, right? There's only so much we can do in our individual structure that's devoid of the larger picture, right? The micro and the macro. But
Right.
we can lay the seeds for more healthy expression, shame-free sexuality, to be expressed and explored. And that's really something I'm so passionate about, because it's not to say that, I think people have this idea that, like, oh, if you're shameless, you're going to do despicable things. That's not at all what we're talking about. We're
Right.
talking about, if you're shameless, you're much more likely to engage in healthy, appropriate, beautiful expressions of sexuality versus distorted, pain-based, trauma-based, uh, you know, dangerous forms. And that's my
Right.
hope, that we can talk about that more and find places for that to be expressed. And education is a key piece of that.
Yeah, and I think that like talking about shame too specifically is from my experience when I were to go like look at shame. Like if I feel shame, like that, it's like this little kid that just like runs away. I'm like, and then and then it's like a deeper of like, oh, okay, going a deeper level, then a deeper level of like anger, resentment, sadness, whatever it is. And I think that that is, going through my own like system. I think that that is really powerful because, we at the surface it could be body shame. At the surface it could be this. At the surface it could be that. But then you kind of, a lot of people don't want to go into that story or level of or like layer of it, but it seems like, what you do for your clients, and I'm so excited. I'm gonna listen to your podcast. I listened to one episode, but I'm like, now I'm gonna listen to it like does it come out every single week so everybody can know?
Thank you. Thank you. It's monthly right now, but there are a lot of them, so you can check
Yeah.
them.
Okay. I was like, I'm excited. I'm a podcast, obviously, I'm a podcast girl. So I'm like, I cannot wait to listen to the podcast. I'll also make sure that the listeners can also listen to the podcast because I think this is like a huge topic lately, especially for me too, of like body shaming, of like when I
Mm.
notice myself looking in the mirror and I'm like, what am I telling myself? Like, I thought I healed this. And it's like, oh, okay. It's kind of like that spiral of like that part of you that like you healed that. And then it's like you're spiraling back because you need to go to a deeper level. And I think it's like that's kind of like I call it the spiritual spiral. I don't know what it's actually called, but that's going into that deeper level. And I think that so many other people collectively are there too of the word juicy is kind of like I don't know why everybody's saying juicy, but it gets to that level of it's okay, and it's needs to be talked about more. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm so excited that we're talking about it because
Well,
it's
and thank you for pointing out like that shame is something you want to run from. It is a horrible feeling. It is the deepest level of darkness and heaviness, right?
right.
And I was told by my guides, if you'll allow that,
Oh yeah, sure, of course,
if you
always.
can speak that language, um,
Yeah,
that shame is one of the biggest lies perpetrated on humanity. That shame is not a truth in the spirit realm. There's no shame,
yeah,
you know, that
yeah,
our that is such a uniquely human construct, right?
yeah.
And a way of controlling us and making us feel less than for whatever reason. Um, but I think what's so important is when we can look at each other and have these conversations and be like, I feel that too. And because it feels so lonely when it's your own.
Right.
It's
100%.
so debilitating and paralyzing when it's just in your own mind, especially as we're young and we don't have available resources to process it, right? And so many young people didn't or don't. When we can sit here and talk about it together and be like, yes, I feel that too, then we open the possibility for more people to come forward and say, oh, I'm not alone in that. Because shame is a uniquely solitary pain. It's a collective pain, but it's
Right.
experienced in deep privacy and loneliness. And when we can crack that open and bring some light to it, right, that shadow starts to unlock and we start to bring it to light. And that's where the incredible healing, because as you know, Lauren, the more of us who heal our pain and trauma, the more light we bring to the planet. And the
Right.
more light we bring to the planet, it just grows and grows. And there's no small, people say, well, what good is it going to do? I'm going to sit and meditate and like, so what? And I always say, like, there's the scales of like, there's so much pain and suffering and darkness. And are you adding to that? Or are you adding just a little drop in the bucket of hope, levity,
Right.
joy, release, expansion? And that's the best we can do in each of our individual journey is offer a little more into the better bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not like I truly believe, I just said this to one of my mentors. I said, people talk about world peace and, maybe I even said it on a podcast. I don't know. I don't know where I said it. I said it somewhere the last couple months of like, what if it was just like this random thought that I had, like, what if the solution to world peace or however you want to like healing the world is like all of us just heal ourselves
Mm,
and then
I know.
heal other people. Like, I'm like, I really truly believe that that actually could be a solution. And, she's like, I truly believe that too, because it starts with ourselves, you know?
Yes. And as you know, too, I feel very strongly that the revolution is a revolution of consciousness. It's not going to happen in the third dimension political field. It's not going to happen in
Right.
religion and control systems. Not that all religions are bad. It's more just that it's my God's better than yours, and I'm going to war with you over like whose God is right. That's a lot
Right.
of what human fallibilities have fallen into. But the more we can do with our taking accountability for our own nervous system, let's just start there, right?
Right.
That's our
Yeah.
vibration. And we understand frequency resonates with similar frequencies. So the more you're in a healed space, the less darker frequencies are going to have effect on you. The
Right.
less access they have to you, the more you heal. And, to that degree, it is a responsibility and a great opportunity of part of what our souls came here to do, right? Is to
Right.
find that frequency together and invite others into it.
Yeah, to raise the vibration of the, planet. Because I think, like you just said about the frequency piece, I don't think people realize, like, when people come to me and say, like, why am I attracting this person? Why am I attracting this person? Or like if it's business related, I'm like, well, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your, like, it's more of, I'm like, okay, so you subconsciously, or, maybe it's not normally conscious, but
Yeah.
maybe it is, I'm not sure. But it's like, that's the, like, what is your nervous system? You want this, you desire this, but your nervous system can't hold that. And it's like, I know for me, if somebody would have told me that 6 years ago,
Yeah.
start here, start your nervous system, then I'd be
Right.
like, oh, perfect. Not going back on that. But I think, specifically, I've always believed in, I couldn't name it at the time that it
Yeah.
was frequency, but I knew that after reading The Secret, after reading all these books, I realized I believe that. I've always believed that. And now I just need to do the opposite of what I keep telling myself. And then it's not magic. It's literally just frequency of like, oh, that works. Or even now of like, if I have a negative thought and I'm like, well, I'm not going down that road because I already experienced it. And sometimes I decide to go down that road and it's like, well, what was that for? Like I already learned this lesson. So it's kind of like the patterns stop repeating, the cycles stop repeating because you're like learning. And that's not good or bad. It's again back to the frequency that you're attracting, and you obviously have to have a desire. So I think that that's really powerful. I mean, that's a long answer to why you attract what you attract, but it's not good or bad. But I think to your point too about frequency, and I think that it's kind of like when you say 3D, it's kind of like we can't change the 3D. The 3D is here and it's here for a reason, and it has
Mm.
systems and it has this and it has that, but it's like we can change our own 3D, like, where we are.
Right. But in doing so, we do change the 3D.
Well, yeah, yeah.
You
I'm
know,
not like
yeah.
saying like get rid
Yeah,
of all of
no,
the dark in the world.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
difference being we can't act on the outside hoping that we have to start from the inside and
Right.
understand that that has the accumulative effect in the 3D.
Right. Yeah. 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 So
And that,
yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and there's a certain level of like, that's free will, right? It was part of our
Right.
human opportunity is that like you said, when a negative thought creeps in, right?
Hmm.
I love the saying, don't always believe what you think, right? Because we get so caught up in our like, well, now, and I've thought this and therefore it must be true. And then we have these whole, internal battles that we go through while we're just doing the laundry, right? Um, and then you're like, God damn, why I didn't have to do that to myself. And now I've like hurt my own feelings, right? And
Yeah.
that's all being able to watch our thoughts and stop it when it starts vortexing down and go, take a breath, calm my nervous system, and reframe it. And that's really what a yoga practice or a meditation practice like it's like, yeah, yeah, okay, you feel better and you feel stretched out and you feel a little more relaxed. But a lot of it is giving you the opportunity to sit in that moment. As you know, if you're holding a pose for a period of time, your mind's going to go through all sort of this is stupid and ow, I hate this and why am I doing this and oh my God, I'm going to die. And then you get to the other side of it and then you go, oh wow, okay, I survived that. and you were watching all the ways your mind created a story that you couldn't do it or it was too hard or right?
Yeah. And I think that that's the most powerful thing when like going back to talking about like emotions. And it's kind of like there's a story and there's also an emotion attached to the story. And it's like picking out that story. Even doing the somatic renewal practice that I do with my mentor, I've even caught myself last night when I was saying a story about a relationship and my mind was like, oh, well, that's his fault. The 80% is his. I'm like, wait a second. No, what? Come on. I'm trying to like, come on. Like that
Right,
is a story. Like I'm trying to down blame 80% of the, taking, I just need to see what is mine. That's all. And it's like in my mind, like, but after saying this, like everybody was laughing. I'm like, I'm telling you, the story comes in more times than not, or like, of when I'm just trying to look at what I need to look at. And then
yeah,
here comes, my ego. I call it my middle name. Marie is my middle name. Marie, like you're okay.
right,
You're not needed right now. And it's just
uh,
interesting because it's like the dark humor is usually the way that I like to, deal with that because it's, I came from a place that like I hated my ego. I didn't want it. And
right,
then I'm like, well, I have to have my ego. I'm human. It comes with my meat suit, so I need it. And just like understanding that piece, I think is really important. And I think, it comes from that, what you just said too, of like in yoga pose, of like, this is stupid. You can't do it. Your arms hurt. Why don't you just put your arms down? And then you're like done to
yeah,
the next pose, and you're like, oh, I could do that, you
right.
know?
And then that applies to when a challenging situation arises, as they tend to do in life. You can
Yeah,
approach it with poor me and why is this happening to me and that's not fair and this sucks. Or
yeah,
what can I learn from this? Why is this showing up right now? Why did my soul choose this? That's a whole, head trip. But and how can I grow from
right,
it? Right? How can I
right.
grow from this? Thank you for this. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for that. There's that saying, our enemies are often our best teachers, right?
Yeah,
Our adversities are often the best opportunities for growth. Those are very, we have resistance to those human truths, but it is what it is. And I love that saying, like watching our own resistances, right? Like watching the ways that,
yeah,
Eckhart Tolle talks about a lot. It's not the pains or the circumstance so much as your resistance to it. So if you can allow what is with less of that internal battle as much as possible is really the key to using mindfulness to help yourself and to create a little more peace and harmony and flow, right? With what is.
right. Yeah. So before we wrap up, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and sharing. But if somebody was listening to this and maybe they feel like stuck or heavy emotionally, or even just like blocked right now, what would you recommend them starting with? Integrating like mindfulness, maybe some forgiveness or movement in just a simple, practical way without trying to
Yeah.
add more onto their nervous system and then they're overwhelmed.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, my simplest, you know, prescription would be if you can start your day each day, you could do 3 minutes, right? Everybody can find 3 minutes potentially, except for like parents of young kids. I mean, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes it felt
I can still do it. Yeah.
full, right?
Yeah.
Where you take that time for yourself to connect to source, whatever that means to you. If it's a religious practice, but just to breathe and sit and feel gratitude and honor that you are a divine being having a human experience. Because the minute the alarm goes off and we're into our phones and we're into the drama and we're into the obligations and all the things that are pulling us in all directions, if you can take your time to set your foundation first and feel connected to source, then you have this infinite supply of resources to come at your day with versus your day coming at you. And that is a simple reframe of switching out of victim mode and into flow, that I am guided, I am protected, I've got this. And so if it just means sitting and breathing deeply, if you like to chant a mantra, if you have a certain affirmation that you'd like to, if you want to make a gratitude list each morning, but really taking, if you can do 20 minutes, awesome, each day to connect to a deeper sense of yourself, you're going to look at your day differently and you'll feel much more empowered in what comes.
Yes, and I can definitely resonate and, subscribe to this because I have forgot about that for a couple months and started to intentionally do it.
Mm.
And of course, I was like, my daughter has to get up for school and I have all these excuses. And I was like, I can take, well, I gave myself 10 minutes, right? And then it turned into a half hour. And then I'm getting up early to do it because it was like, I really want to do it. Sometimes it doesn't happen as soon as I wake up. It happens when I drop her off at school, or it
Right.
looks different and the consistency is different. I do it every day though. And I think that for me has been truly powerful, like within my own spiritual practice. So,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all of your wisdom with us today. I
Thank
truly
you.
feel like this conversation was very powerful. Where can everybody find you?
Thank you, Lauren. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Yes.
The best place is my website, elizabeth-hudson.com, or I'm on Instagram, Elizabeth dot Hudson 11, or TikTok, Elizabeth Hudson.
Yeah. So make sure you, and also her
Sacred
podcast.
Alchemy, Sacred Alchemy on iTunes and Spotify.
Yes. And make sure everybody listening, you guys are all podcast people. So make sure you go listen to her podcast, give her a rating and also a comment. That always helps all of us that have podcasts. So, everybody listening, if you resonate with this episode, make sure again, just gently reminder that you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening to it and also on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you're craving deeper community support or even real transformation with other spiritual led women, I want to invite you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. This is where we can work together with live calls, healing space, and aligned leadership. You can find that link below in the show notes. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you next week.